Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on the Respondent Part 8. This is, before I actually go into the chapter, I did get some responses from who it appears to be Greg Ellis himself. He apparently has a YouTube channel called The Respondent. It looks like a very new channel. I'm not sure exactly when he launched it, probably around the time that his book published, I would imagine, since the channel is named after his book. I am going to go through his comments. He hasn't posted too many of them. Um, let's see. So this one he posted in part one. Let me switch over so you guys can see what I'm talking about. He says that my concoctions and, quote, uninformed retelling of his experience through family law, unquote, is not what actually happened, not even close. He says for the actual story, he'd encourage you guys to read the book because you're not getting the real story on this channel, not even close. So he says that twice. Uh, this is an odd comment because I'm sure many of you are reading the book. That's the point of me reviewing this. So there's two really big things. One thing is to actually review a book that's become very popular because of the connections to Mr. Baldwin and Johnny Depp. But the other part is actually connecting this book with our experiences going through high conflict child custody cases. So the only thing I can imagine is that I really am having a hard time to imagine what this person wants. If he's expecting me to just run the book through the channel, that's probably a copyright issue. If he's thinking I'm not reading the book, that's bizarre because I am, and each part corresponds to a specific chapter. So this corresponds to chapter one. Yeah, honestly, at this point, reading that comment, I think he's just trying to hawk his book. Um, because I don't understand exactly what he's saying that isn't accurate, especially since it's mostly opinion, and opinions are not subject to like an objective analysis because they're based on my opinion. So let's go to the to the next one. This is looks like part five. He posted a comment. Um, okay, so it looks like two comments. So first he says, so many incorrect facts here that it's embarrassing. He didn't go to live in a neighboring house, but that's what he says in the book. He actually says, okay, I think what he's saying here is that he didn't live in the house next door. He does say he went to live with a neighbor. That's in his book. He's saying, so maybe he's not in the house next door, but he's somewhere in close proximity because that's the vibe that I'm getting from that chapter. Saying that he didn't take anyone's phone. Now, if you read the book, he doesn't admit to that. He says, wait a minute, that's even okay, that's odd. So it's not his phone. So I think what he's taking issue with the word take is that it was given to him and he was allowed to use it. So I think this is in reference to Brian, the neighbor, and that he is saying that he didn't take the phone, as in the word makes it seem like he did so without permission, which was what Brian said to the police. So just because Brian said something to the police doesn't mean that that's necessarily true. But I'm not sure why. It's like he wants me to take his side and automatically agree with everything that's favorable to him, which is problematic because if you write a book like this, you have to understand that your readers aren't all going to agree with you. You're going to take some criticism. And that's just, it seems like an odd thing to nitpick at. Okay, yeah, here we go. He wasn't one house away. So this is not a good distinction. This is not, because he's trying to say, I did something that I shouldn't have, but I didn't do it exactly in the way that you said that I did. This is almost like the way that my ex claimed that she didn't pull my son out of the car through the window, but rather that she opened the door and pulled him out of the car that way. In her head, hey, the way that he said I did it wasn't exactly true. But any other person's going to say, okay, those things were both wrong for you to do because according to the court's order, that was his visit. So same thing here, just because you're not one house away doesn't mean that you shouldn't, that you're okay with, it doesn't mean that you don't deserve some criticism for being that close to the house. And that's the issue most people are going to have, is that he went to the neighborhood, which was very close to the house, especially under the circumstances as I discussed in this video. So To say that he wasn't one house away, to me, is just him saying that he wasn't adjacent, but he was still in the neighborhood. He was homeless and stayed one night with a friend. I mean, he talks about this in the chapter. He says he was a neighbor and friend. Okay. This is another odd comment because honestly, it kind of reminds me, I just say it kind of reminds me of the communications with my ex. Um, I don't know what to tell you guys. It's not good. It's not helping my opinion. It's not making him look better to me. The real and only red flag here is that this commentator hasn't really read my book. Well, that's completely false because I've been going through it chapter by chapter. He even narrates it with his own voice. I mean, I really wish that this didn't look as bad as it's starting to look now as I'm going through this. Misinterpreting facts and presenting incorrect facts. These are the perceptions that I'm getting. Keep in mind that I am a complete stranger. I have no beef against this particular author. And it comes off to me as if I've been designated as an enemy or as an opponent very quickly. Rather, I think what he should be doing is taking the constructive feedback. Because if I'm getting these perceptions, then other readers could be getting these perceptions too. And rather than try and take that as constructive criticism and understand another perspective, it's like he's immediately on the defensive and he's counterattacking. So I don't know this guy from Adam. And these comments are concerning because they actually are consistent with some of the fears that I've had going through and reading the book. So let me continue on. So if you're really interested in what actually happened, not this bizarre retelling replete with judgments and misinterpretations, then read the book or listen to the audiobook. By the way, what I've been doing is listening to the audiobook. He's a great storyteller, I'll tell you that much. His communication is clear, concise, and the language that he uses is very, high end. This is pretty consistent with the comments that I'm reading too. But again, he's just comes off as trying to hawk his book because I'm obviously reading it. That's where the facts are to be found, not here. So people aren't coming here for just pure facts because these are the viewers from the Proper Person channel who are going through high conflict child custody litigation. So they are going to want me to connect what I'm reading to high conflict child custody issues and my perceptions with my own case. So if this person is really expecting like a verbatim retelling of his story, that's troubling too. I'm just more concerned now than I was before as I go through these. So my response here is to hang in there till the end. It's good that you posted this, as I'll mention it next video, so they have your perspective, which is what I'm doing now. And then he again says, my perspective, try recounting the facts of what I wrote rather than what you're guessing I was trying to say, lacing it with incorrect Okay, so this is extremely consistent with the high conflict communications that I used to get from my ex. So what my response here is giving him the benefit of the doubt and trying to de-escalate the conflict. And his response to my response, which appears to be a same-day response. So yeah, this is rapid fire. So that's another thing. It's another concerning thing. And his response is to not allow it to de-escalate and to actually escalate it higher. So I'm getting the all caps on actually. I'm getting it's people like you who are the reason more people don't come forward to tell their stories. So this is demagoguery. What he's trying to do is you guys can look up demagogue. Look up demagoguery, you'll know what I'm talking about. Just Google it. That's what this line here is. Next, we have a comment to... Wait a minute. So now he's responding to my viewers. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's see what's going on here. So my viewer says that saying she betrayed him for not bringing the book sounds like he has control issues. Like he gave her an order, she didn't comply, so he's mad and claiming that she betrayed him. He responds to my viewer saying, if you'd actually read the book, rather than relying on this man's incorrect interpretations of what he posits I'm trying to say, you'd know that your comments here are baseless and incorrect. Okay, so now he's starting to, this is a problem. This is probably the way that he was communicating with his ex, with the court, and with the attorneys. He immediately goes into the defensive and he immediately counterattacks because I don't know why he's doing this. See, this person has a perspective, and if I was him, I would try to elaborate maybe. I mean, what I hate, this is the thing that's really frustrating, is that this author got two very important, famous people to help boost the popularity of his book. And it looks to me that his communications are indicative to me that he's the high conflict party. Just because people just because you wrote a book expecting people to understand it a certain way doesn't mean that those viewers are going to have their own opinions. You could have intended a message to come off a certain way, and other people may not receive it the way that you intended. And just because they don't doesn't mean that you should attack them. Rather, you should try to understand where they are coming from. And be careful what you wish for, because these people probably are reading your book and they are probably coming to the conclusions that I've come to. Not all of them will, but this is an audience that's very specific to high conflict child custody litigation. That must be something that he's not accustomed to. Because when you communicate this to somebody who's a complete stranger to high conflict child custody litigation, especially pro se litigation, they may not really understand the depths of it and they may just take your word for it. But when you come to this channel, you're going to get confronted because people will have actual experiences of what they've gone through. You may not get the reactions that you think you're going to get from the viewers on this channel. This viewer responds to the respondent, "You do not control my opinion, sir, and neither does the proper person. I do. Thank you. This is an excellent statement. If I see your book in a public library, I will check it out. Otherwise, I refuse to help boost you or your platform financially by purchasing your material, as I have followed your social media presence for quite some time and I am appalled by your gender bias as well as your interview with Juan Pablo Torres, a man who admitted to kidnapping your own daughter." I'm probably going to take a look at this interview. See, I don't know anything about this stuff. Let's move on to the last one. So let's see. So my viewer says, "To me, breaking into the house in this situation is creepy as beep. He already had a TPO that she filed, then he wants to, quote, work it out, unquote. Come on, I don't want to be even near my ex, and we had none of this stuff. Bring in a mental health ward and then breaking into the house. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I would think that too, and I'm not a judge or an attorney. That's like a McDonald." Okay, this Greg Ellis probably doesn't know what the reference here is. McDonald is from the Michael McDonald case in Nevada that's been recorded and published. The entire trial has been recorded and published. It's like Mr. McDonald placing a GPS tracker for work. Sorry, that is creepy. He responds to the viewer, "To me, listening to this third-party reimagining of what happened and then passing creepy judgments without actually knowing the real facts of the story." Well, I know the facts that you've put in your book. So maybe what he wants is for me to do some independent investigation, which is not the purpose of this review. The review is to go, so I know what this particular person has told me in his book. Speaks to your character. The ongoing commentary of the book is so off base, so you keep relying on this man guessing what I'm trying to say, and perhaps read the actual book, the facts. One thing that I could do is I could actually push play. Been taken from their father, and yet they can never really be extricated. I have the book. I'm reading from it. I have it. Let's see. Her response: "He clearly admits in his book that he broke in." Okay, so maybe she read it. So she's saying he clearly admits in his book that he broke in, and that led me to my creepy conclusion. Okay, so to my conclusion is creepy AF. It's my opinion, and it's valid. Any person who has their soon-to-be ex that had a restraining order and got out of a mental health ward and then breaks into the house to work it out is a big red flag. That's some sociopathic behavior. And for the record, you'll have your opinion and I'll have mine." So this is what I've been saying. Like, these viewers seem to very quickly understand what the point of commentary is. And he says, if you want to okay, so she says, if you want to defend a creep, then by all means go for it. So I don't think she knows that this is actually Greg Ellis. It's his channel here. This is him. I will look more into the channel later, I suppose. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my notes. Let's see. In this chapter, my observations are mostly general. He is going into the misandry versus misogyny issues. He talks about how misogyny is spoken about very publicly, but what he calls tales of female toxicity are expected to be kept to ourselves. Um, and I think that that's true for the most part for the past who knows how long. It's always been considered, you're allowed to talk about male toxicity, but female toxicity doesn't exist. That's very consistent with reality, in my opinion. Less so now, but certainly for the first 30 years of my life, that's kind of how it was. Women are equal slaves to their passions as men. That's true. And that the way that women treat kids in an abusive slash neglectful way, swept under the rug. But when it comes to men, it's not. I mean, this is stuff that I think a lot of people know. It goes to what I talked about in my video, gender bias. It really does. He actually names the judge. I don't remember the name, something like Kaufman, I don't know. It doesn't matter because he doesn't go much further into it at this point. That would be a good thing. I hope at some point there's a little bit more detail on the actual litigation itself. Um, he talks about encountering a witness, the Patrick Fabian witness, and other witnesses. He confronts the witness. Why did you write a declaration against me? The witness responds he was doing what he thought would help him. I could tell that I don't know, I would never do that. I don't know. If a witness has come to court to testify against you, to confront them. Okay, I'm just going to say, he confronts the witness in a way to make him feel bad. Basically a guilt trip. So the witness, from their perspective, probably was already very uncomfortable with doing this. They probably did not want to feel like they were getting in the middle of this case. They probably did not want to feel like they were picking who the kids were going to spend time with. My vibe from this chapter is that that's exactly what he did. He went to confront the witness, whether he intended to or not, to pull him in the middle of the conflict and then to make him feel bad, like it was going to be his testimony and declaration that were going to make him lose his kids. When the witness is probably thinking to myself, my observations are, a small part of a big puzzle piece, or a big puzzle. Well, one puzzle piece of a larger puzzle. The court's going to make the decision. The law is going to make the decision. But that's not what I got from the description of the confrontation of that witness. My understanding is that Mr. Ellis went to let the witness know that he had a hand potentially in him losing custody of his kids. He does talk about how this witness and others are victims as well, that they got caught in what he calls toxic gravity. He calls them ancillary victims of the smear campaign. And I guess I don't know. To me, that's like saying they weren't directly targeted by his ex, but despite this, they still suffered in some lesser way by getting propaganda, rumors, all of that stuff from her. He brings up that none of them had, or a few of them had, direct knowledge of what actually happened to him, and that the knowledge that they did have came from what he calls propaganda peddlers. That's the smear campaign, though. That's something that many of us will know. We've gone through it. That's not that it's something that he shouldn't talk about, but it's pretty consistent with high conflict child custody cases. So not really anything there that is new. He spends some time talking about how his career suffered, and he brings up the fact that his ex exploited the better safe than sorry mentality of his industry, which is, I think, probably very consistent with most of these industries. A lot of times they're going to want to, be safe rather than sorry. That's actually, I think, one of the things that came up during the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, is that her accusations, even though they were false and not supported by evidence, still caused Johnny Depp to lose, movie deals and stuff because of the better safe than sorry mentality. I mean, that's it's valid. He talks about one of his friends, apparently, who was, talking to both sides, being a double agent. He uses that phrase, that this particular friend, I guess, was getting information from and providing information to his ex, while at the same time getting information from and providing information to him. Not a lot stuck out in my mind, except for the fact that this friend helped expose a contradiction with one of the allegations that his ex made. I don't know if he's going to do anything with it in court later, but it did stand out to me. And one thing that I think was insightful was he talked about how the, I guess, the people that participate or work in or are somehow connected to, as professionals, to the family court system, specifically a caseworker, um, CPS/DCFS. He talks about how she and others are prisoners of what he calls deeply held ideologies, and that it helps them to abuse their power. And I think that that is probably very true because, I mean, I was a CASA for a while. I actually had to work with CPS/DCFS, with caseworkers, with the court system. And I did see very troubling behavior from them. And I do feel that it's something that they are probably aware of, but they justify to themselves that they think that they're doing the right thing. Number one, they're not lawyers, so they don't maybe know all of the laws, and they probably don't give much value to it because they don't understand it. And number two, it's very easy for a person with deeply held ideologies to justify things that they're doing that are wrong. I think that that is an insightful comment towards the end of the chapter that I wanted to talk about. All of that being said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.